media scrutiny. But after years of watching others tell his life story, he says that it was time for him to finally take control of the narrative.
I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there. There's a lot that I can forgive, but there needs to be conversations and then in order for reconciliation, and part of that has to be accountability.
In his new memoir, Spare, Prince Harry writes about the British royal family's complicated relationship he says they have with the British press, and chronicles the family dynamics that led him and his wife Meghan to step back from royal life. Share with me the significance of the title.
Within the family as such, there's the spare and the heir. My brother being the heir and me being the spare. And so I think it was just a really good opportunity to choose a title that had been somewhat used against me for a long part of my life and own that title.
To the outside world, Prince Harry and his brother Prince William have always appeared close, seemingly bonded by the death of their mother, Princess Diana, when Harry was just 12. In his memoir, Harry writes about a more complex relationship, recalling verbal and even physical disputes between the brothers. You refer to your brother as your beloved brother and arch nemesis. Strong words.
There has always been this competition between us, weirdly. Again, I think it really plays into, or is played by, the heir spare and the British press's part in that, right? They pitched the Waleses, right, of which Kate and William are now, against the Sussexes, me and my wife. They always pitched us against each other. They pitched Kate and Meghan against each other.
So when they pitched them against each other, do you think that it made them kind of go against each other?
Yeah, I mean, without question.
Harry claims members of the royal family and their staff fed stories to the press and refused to set the record straight on false reports, especially about his wife Meghan, shifting a negative spotlight onto her in order to protect other royals. You have any examples of some of those stories?
There's a whole handful of examples in the book. It's so petty, but it's the bridesmaids' dresses.
Yeah.
Right? That was a real hard one for me because I was like, we've moved on from that. But while I was writing the book, we were on version 29 or 30, all of which involved my wife supposedly making numerous people within my family cry, which just simply wasn't the case. For historical reference, like, the truth needs to be there and it needs to come from me.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
KCC 30 million mega raffle.
It's Maybelline. G22, you better know, son, kisser.
I think she would be sad. I think she'd be looking at it long term to know that there are certain things that we need to go through to be able to heal the relationship. I think she would be heartbroken that it's ended up where it's ended up. I think she'd be heartbroken about the fact that William, his office, were part of these stories. And William and I made a pact, made a deal that no matter what, we would never let our offices fight against each other. You think he broke that pact? Yes, no, the people that he employed broke that pact.
Do you think you have any responsibility in the breakdown of the relationship?
I'm without question, I'm sure. But what people don't know is the efforts that I've gone to resolve this privately, both with my brother and with my father.
Harry also writing about family issues with his father, King Charles, and his wife, Queen Consort Camilla, saying both he and his brother asked their father not to marry Camilla, but that he also wanted his father to be happy, writing, quote, "In a funny way, I even wanted Camilla to be happy. Maybe she'd be less dangerous if she was happy." When your father married Camilla, you wrote, "I had complex feelings about gaining a step-parent who I thought had recently sacrificed me on her personal PR altar." What had she done at that point, you felt?
I have a huge amount of compassion for her, being the third person within my parents' marriage. And she had a reputation or an image to rehabilitate. And whatever conversations happened, whatever deals or trading was made right at the beginning, she was led to believe that that would be the best way to doing it.
And what is your relationship with Camilla now?
We haven't spoken for a long time. You know, I love every member of my family, despite the differences. So when I see her, we're perfectly pleasant with each other. You know, she's my stepmother. I don't look at her as an evil stepmother. I see someone who married into this institution and has done everything that she can to, you know, improve her own reputation and her own image for her own sake.
As his relationship with Meghan got more serious and dominated headlines, Harry believed his father and Camilla got jealous.
I was surprised when I read that you're in the car with your father and your brother. Kind of casually brings up Meghan, and then casually drops in that he doesn't have enough, he wouldn't be able to support you both. How did that make you feel? Where did that come from?
It's a funny one within the family, right? My father was ultimately responsible for both me and my brother and, you know, our partners and our families. So it did seem a little bit strange that somehow the rules were being changed or that I was being guided on a very different path, or at least my partner was being guided on a very different path should we end up getting married.
Harry says women who marry into his family face intense media scrutiny, but when it came to Meghan, he says the British press used her race against her.
My wife is not visibly black, but that's who she is. The way that they speak about her and the way they treat her is incredibly relatable to everybody else of color.
So did it give you a better sense, being with Meghan, about how black women are seen, treated in society as a whole?
Yeah.
With the paparazzi playing a role in his mother's deadly car crash, Harry said that he feared the relentless British media coverage of his family could endanger Meghan and their son Archie.
I'm trying to put a stop to this because I can't ever imagine, and I don't want to imagine, what that would be like for me or for my kids, especially when you talk about history repeating itself, right?
Harry writes that he suggested a possible solution to the royal family, a hybrid proposal that would have allowed them to split their time between Canada and the UK while still serving the Queen.
Recently, you lost your grandmother, and I offer my condolences to you. Did she ever express that she was upset at you?
For what?
Or wanting to change your role within the family?
My grandmother and I had a very good relationship. It was never a surprise to anybody, least of all her. She knew what was going on, she knew how hard it was. She never said to me that she was angry. I think she was sad that it had got to that point.
Harry says his proposed plan was ultimately denied and his security, which was funded by UK taxpayers, was taken away from him.
There was no compromise with the family?
No, which was really sad because I still to this day believe that this was entirely possible.
There are going to be people who say, why don't they either be in or get out? Because if you get out, there's no hypocrisy.
I can't ever get out. And I'm incredibly aware of my position, and I'm incredibly grateful for the life that I've had and continue to live. But there's no version of me being ever be able to get out of this. I was stunned that my family would allow security to be taken away, especially at the most vulnerable point for us.
Did you think that they didn't understand your concerns, or they didn't concern themselves with your concerns? They didn't care?
Sarap together! New Lucky Me Beef Chili Mansi Mami!
Hello everyone, I'm excited to introduce Bluesong, the new standard solution, 30 kilowatts and 50 kilowatts, all-in-one cabin.
I think probably a little bit of both.
Some critics are going to say, well, you're taking private struggles, you're making money off of them, you're getting paid from it, so it's almost as if you've sold out your family.
And the only way that I can protect us, the only way that I can correct those mistruths is by writing something, the truth, in one place. Then I fully accept that writing a book is feeding the beast anyway.
Is there a part of you that can see you and your family going back to the UK, becoming working royals with the monarchy?
I don't think it's ever going to be possible. I don't think that, you know, even if there was an agreement or an arrangement between me and my family, there is that third party that is going to do everything they can to make sure that that isn't possible. Not stopping us from necessarily going back, but making it unsurvivable. And that's really sad because that is essentially breaking the relationship between us. There was something in the future where, you know, we can continue to support the Commonwealth, then that's of course on the table.
And Prince Harry says he felt the responsibility to speak out against the racism and cronyism that he says his family faced in the British press, because if he can't do it with all of his resources, then who can? He also hopes that by exposing the relationship he describes between the family and the press, it will stop and hopefully protect other members of the family and future generations to come. In our next hour, Prince Harry talked very candidly about his mental health struggles, the moment he finally accepted his mom's death, and how he still feels her presence today, especially as the father of two. Also, Prince Harry, in his own words, half-hour special will stream on ABC News Live and Hulu tonight at 8:30 p.m. Spare is available everywhere tomorrow.
Well, that breach is so deep in that family.
So deep, and he's very honest about it, George. He does not hold back at all.
It seems like he is wanting accountability before there can be any sort of reconciliation.
Yes, I think he's willing to admit his fault and hopes that others will look at his example and admit theirs. I think that's the only way he feels the family can come back together.
All right.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube.
It's been a big day for Prince Harry, and an emotional one as well. Things didn't go entirely the way he wanted at the Court of Appeal, prompting a surprise interview with the BBC.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done.
This all happened because Prince Harry lost his appeal against a High Court ruling about his UK security, and he called it an establishment stitch-up. Clearly still angry and emotional. He sat down with the BBC, where he said he wants reconciliation with his family. But is that still possible? Find out after this.
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malika Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Matt Barbette. You're listening to this extra episode of the Sky News Daily, which we're bringing to you as Prince Harry lost his legal challenge over the level of security that he receives when he's here in the UK. Afterwards, he gave a really in-depth interview, an incendiary one really, where he opened up emotionally about how the issue of security has been a wedge between him and the rest of his family.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
But will this plea from Harry to reconcile with his wider family, with his father in particular, fall on deaf ears? Rhiannon Mills is our royal correspondent. Rhiannon, we have to start with just your reaction, really, to what is a simply extraordinary interview in reaction to this Court of Appeal judgment today by Prince Harry.
In some ways, probably not surprising. I have been in the room with Prince Harry before. I've done interviews with him before where he has got more personal than I'd expected. And he's certainly a man who wears his heart on his sleeve. And that's what we've seen once again with this interview. It's astonishing. But I think, again, it shows that this is now a man who feels that he is no longer controlled by the royal institution and can say, frankly, what he likes.
And we should remind people of what it's all about, because he's been involved in other court cases recently.
Yes,
it's easy to confuse them all.
Yeah, so this one specifically, and I think it's actually been one of the most contentious issues since both Harry and Meghan decided that they'd had enough and they wanted to step away from royal life. It's all been bound up in their security and the fact that when they decided to leave the UK, the Home Office and this group that's this body, the Royal VIP Executive Committee that decides who exactly should get police protection, they ultimately turned around and went, well, no, the police protection is going. You're not having it anymore. And Prince Harry, through his legal team, has consistently argued that ultimately it was his safety and security that were at stake here. And also for him, most importantly, the safety and security of Meghan and his children. He initially lost that case, which is why he then took it to appeal. The Home Office have all along said, look, he is a completely unique case. He has stepped away from royal life. He's stepped away from the UK. And they believe that, like taking it on a case-by-case basis when he visits the UK, that is the fairest way of assessing whether he needs police protection or not. Today, of course, we've heard that the appeal court judges have decided that the Home Office has been right all along. And for Harry, still, it'll be on a case-by-case basis in terms of his security.
I guess on the legal side of things, he could try and take it to the Supreme Court, but really, the judgment is one thing. It's the reaction that everyone is now talking about, this emotional interview. He called it, the decision, an establishment stitch-up, and he's also called on the government, called on the Prime Minister to intervene in this. I mean, showing that it seems to be a very personal thing for him.
Oh, there is no doubt this has been the most personal crusade for him. He has seen this as a huge point of principle. Interestingly, he actually spoke to some journalists after that 2-day hearing back in April for the appeal court hearing. He spoke to journalists and he said, look, I may not win this case, but if I can make a difference to other people, then that hopefully will be enough. And we've seen that also, of course, with his cases against the tabloid newspapers. But yeah, he holds this so dearly because I think he feels that security is integral to the way that he can live his life, the way that his family can live their lives. And look, it comes across, doesn't it, where he just pointedly says, I don't think I'm going to be able to bring my children to the UK. That for me is just astonishing. We've heard so much about, well, when's the king going to see the grandchildren and all this kind of stuff. Well, it just shows that just seems like it's a world away from there being any kind of reconciliation. And of course he goes much further, doesn't he, when he talks about that sense of reconciliation and how him and the family are now getting on. It sounds like they couldn't be any further apart, despite the fact that it's been 5 years since they stepped away.
But it is new, isn't it? The idea that what he's saying is he wants a reconciliation. We got a sense that he's not speaking to the king. Well, he's confirmed that now, but we haven't heard him say, look, putting out some sort of olive branch and reconciling as well. I think the other really standout line from all of this, Rhiannon, is he says he doesn't know how long the king has got left, which almost begs more questions about, well, what does he know about his father's health?
If we ever needed to have any proof or any sense of how distanced he is from the rest of his family and how fractured those relationships still are, I think that line said it all, really. We know that when the king announced his cancer diagnosis, Prince Harry did get on a plane and he did fly over here. And a lot was made at the time about the fact that he probably spent about 45 minutes with his father, and then his father sort of flew off to Sandringham and Harry ended up going home. I think this again shows that, and I think this is astonishing, the fact that without even being prompted, he's the one that talks about his book and the hurt that's caused with the family, and how he says some people will never forgive me for that. But it's also, and there's been so many mutterings about this over the last certainly 6 months, about how difficult this issue of the security has been in terms of the split within the family. And he basically today has confirmed that. It's no longer rumours. He has basically pointedly said, I would have liked my father to do more. He does say that he didn't expect him to intervene, but I think what he's nudging towards is, look, his staff, people who represent the king, who are on this board, who helped to kind of advise on who should have security, they should have been doing more. And that's again where you have that line about it all being an establishment stitch-up, it being the men in grey suits. We also in the past had Princess Diana talking about the men in grey suits and the damage that she felt they were doing. So it all does feel a little bit like history repeating itself.
Apart from that, Rhiannon, how do you think the king and Prince William, the Prince of Wales, will react?
I was today years old when I found out that the perfect pillow exists. It's none other than the Emma Sleep foam pillow. Emma gifted me their award-winning ergonomic pillow that's custom.
Will he bounce the king into all of a sudden extending an olive branch? I'm not so sure. An awful lot has been said, an awful lot of hurt has been caused. You have to remember that the king he's a very emotional man. Whenever I've tried to get any sense from the palace about how he feels about being estranged from his son, it's quite difficult. But you do get the sense that there is upset that they have been estranged in this way. I think it's different when it comes to Prince William. Whenever you try and ask anyone at Kensington Palace about how Prince William may feel about a certain thing that his brother's done, it's very much shutters down. And all I ever think is just how terribly sad it is. Especially whenever you look at the archive footage of those two brothers walking alongside each other behind their mother's coffin. to see Harry so separated from his family, and yes, some would say it's of his own doing. He has said some, what some would argue were some very hurtful things. But I think actually if you speak to many people, they'll say it's just, certainly close to them, it's just terribly sad that it's come to this. And I think you can hear that in Harry's voice when he gave this interview. He doesn't hold back, and it's certainly a very emotional one to listen to. I was wondering whether or not we'd hear anything from the palace. Remember that recollections may vary quote that we had from Queen Elizabeth when it came to the Oprah interview. That took at least kind of a couple of days for us to get to that. But we have had something from a palace spokesperson this evening, and all they will say is all of these issues have been examined repeatedly and meticulously by the courts, with the same conclusion reached on each occasion. I think in this case, they have got kind of the court proceedings to hide behind in a way, but you can see they are making it very procedural. They're shifting it away from personal, and Harry has flipped that completely on its head.
Look, we've had the reaction from the palace. We've talked about what Charles and William and the others may think of it, but what realistically could happen next?
So you've potentially got he could go to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court have to agree to take on the case. And I think, speaking to legal experts, they've sort of said, do you know what, this one feels too personal. It doesn't feel like it's making a bigger point that's of real kind of public interest. So I'm not sure how far he's got to go with that one. But as he said, he doesn't feel that he can bring his children back to the UK. He doesn't feel that Meghan can come back to the UK. So it all feels like we're at a bit of a stalemate, really. And that just seems incredibly sad, especially when you consider that his father has cancer, is still having cancer treatment. Only this week at a reception talked about it. What's fascinating for me is we are 5 years on since Harry and Meghan decided to step away from royal life, and yet still they continue to have this enormous impact on the family, on the institution. And in some ways you would have expected there to have been more of a distance, but hopefully more of a healing in terms of the private stuff and the private relationships.
Look, finally, if he won't come here, it's not long before the King and the Queen head across the Atlantic, at least to Canada. Mm-hmm. If Harry doesn't feel safe coming to Britain, maybe there could be a rapprochement there when they head there for the state opening of the Canadian Parliament at the end of May.
Hey, you never know. Harry and Meghan are very fond of Canada. It's where where their relationship blossomed in Toronto. I was actually there at the Invictus Games in Toronto when they stepped out together for the first time. Doesn't that feel like a world away? This is one of those, again, and it is a cliche, but a bombshell moment. We've been through many of them with Harry and Meghan. Oprah is still the one that for me just was extraordinary. But I think it's also, it's not great, the optics for the institution. It does, for those who are real Harry and Meghan supporters, it does, again, make the institution seem, in a way, too buttoned up, too stiff. But no, I don't expect that we will have any kind of, I don't know, interview or kind of further statements from the palace. It's just not how they do things. And look, over the years, they've had to get used to what some would say, these grenades coming from across the Atlantic and kind of getting their heads down. And that is what we're going to see on Monday, all next week. The royal family are going to be out and about. VE Day commemorations, they are going to be so busy, and it will literally be, quite literally, that case of keep calm and carry on.
Rhiannon, thank you very much.
Lovely to chat.
Thanks to listening to this extra episode of the Sky News Daily with me, Matt Barbette. You can get more analysis on this latest Prince Harry saga online on our website or on the Sky News app, of course. Also, why not listen to our other episode from today, where we take a deep dive into the Northern Irish rap band Kneecap.
no excitement. New Lucky Me Beef Chili Mansi. Beef na beef, mommy, with chili mansi. Sarap together. Pili na. New Lucky Me Beef Chili Mansi, mommy.
Sarap! See faster results with the #1 serum in the world. Garnier Vitamin C Plus Booster Serum.
Made specifically for Asian skin, proven to reduce dark spots.
Back in 2020 after he stopped being a working royal. Well, he appealed, arguing he was singled out for different, unjustified and inferior treatment. But 3 judges at the Court of Appeal today rejected that appeal. Well, now, following that judgment, he's told the BBC that it is currently impossible for him and his family to return to the UK. He's also said that because of the current situation, his father, the King, isn't speaking to him. Well, Prince Harry is currently living in California, where he's been speaking to our correspondent Neda Tawfik, and we can bring you that extended interview now.
Obviously, pretty gutted about the decision. We thought it was going to go our way, but it certainly has proven that there was no way to win this through the courts. Wish someone had told me that beforehand. The decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
You're obviously very deeply affected by this. What memories, experiences had you hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this decision?
Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is sadly for funerals or court cases, with the odd charitable function where I can in between that. I put myself at risk for that, but I will continue on with a life of public service, so I will always support the charities and the people that mean so much to me. I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point, and the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK. Of course I do, and I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland. You know.
And as you say, you've gone back several times during this years-long battle. What about the security arrangements that were in place made you feel it would be unsafe for you and your family?
There's only so much that I can say because of the redaction process and the national security matters at hand, but everything. Because in beginning of 2020, I was scored the highest as far as risk was concerned, and then overnight I was reduced to the lowest without actually going through the risk management board. So one does question how that is even possible, and also the motive behind that at the time. And that was in 2020, and as hard as it is to appreciate or understand why the decision was made the way that it was in 2020. The hardest thing for me has been the fix of that decision for the last 5 years. The fact that I still haven't had a risk management board assessment done for me over the last 5 years. Everybody else within this group of people get it at the minimum once a year. So again, I would not have taken this far if I didn't have compelling evidence of facts that reveal why the decision was made. And I'm sitting here today talking to you where, you know, we've lost the appeal, but the other side have won in keeping me unsafe. So again, there's a lot of question marks that a lot of people will have. I have all of the truth. I have all of the knowledge now throughout the legal process. I've uncovered my worst fears. And to now know today, based on this judgment, that there was no legal framework that constrains the decisions of this body, Ravek, of which the royal household sit on. And I didn't know that until this legal process in 2021. One of the first things my lawyer said to me was, as disclosure started, or as this process started, she turned around and said, "Did you know that the royal household sat on Ravek?" And my jaw hit the floor.
Well, I want to ask you about that because the King's private secretary sits on Ravek now.
Sir Clive Alderton, yeah.
Do you wish your father...
And another person as well, but yes.
Do you wish your father had intervened, despite how that may have looked?
KCC Supermarket, pinakabarato.
I've never asked him to intervene. I've asked him to step out of the way and let the experts do their job. This Ravek committee is an expert committee full of professionals, plus the royal household. And the royal household don't have any role in that, on the Ravek committee, other than the helping influence the decisions based on members of the royal family. And 5 years later, every single visit that I do back to the UK has to go through the royal household. My representative on the Ravek committee, still to this day, is the royal household. That is not a decision that I choose. I am forced to go through the royal household and accept that they are putting my best interests forward during these conversations and the deliberations. So no, I haven't asked my father to intervene. The whole point of a risk management board, which, as I said, everybody else gets, but I haven't, never been given since back end of 2019 was the last one that I was given. The whole point of that is to have a board and a risk assessment, a separate board from Ravek that considers all of the facts and all the circumstances. It is a system and an assessment that is designed to be non-biased and to avoid interference. What I know throughout this legal process is the interference that was created came from the royal household. And the Ravek chair at the time, who I believe I can talk about because he's no longer there, Sir Richard Mottram, the first thing he did, well, the first people that he went to go and see was the royal household at the palace. So whether it's the media or whether it's anybody else that claims that the royal household and my father and my family don't have any decision-making capabilities on Ravek, well then what's their role? They're not experts. What's their role on that? And Sir Richard Mottram emailed back in January of 2020 that an RMB would be necessary before taking my security away. After his visit to the palace, that RMB that was planned was abandoned in favour of alternative governance measures.
What the court decided today was that they were justified for 4 reasons to not have that review. And a major part of that is because you're no longer a working royal, a change in your status. Do you not accept that from the court?
Well, my status hasn't changed. It can't change. I am who I am. I am part of what I'm part of, and I can never escape that. My circumstances will always be the same. But with a specific answer to the question, there are comparisons that exist. And again, I have to be careful what I say, but I think it would be quite shocking for the British public and the public at large to understand or know that, in fact many people do know this, that people who leave public office receive lifetime protection, regardless of whether there are threats or risks to them. So for me, with a whole list of risks and threats that were known about in 2020 and that have only increased over time, including the Al-Qaeda threat that was published and talked about recently, completely disregarded, thrown away, ignored, because for me, security was made conditional on having that official role. That role that everybody knows, that myself and my wife wished to carry on, but was stopped from being able to do that. Back in 2020.
What do you say to those who ask, why should the taxpayer pay for your police security if you have your own private security? Where are the gaps there? What's your response to those who say you're getting police protection on a case-by-case basis?
I tell you what, why don't you ask that question again, but in 3 parts, if you could? Because you just put 3 very, very important questions together.
Sure.
And I can't possibly answer all 3 of them at the same time.
Sure. What do you say to those who ask why the UK taxpayer should pay for police security? You have your own private security.
Well, first off, private security can only do so much. Again, I can't go into the details of that, but I think most people will be able to work that out. One of the major things is they don't have jurisdiction in a foreign country, or in any country. They don't have any jurisdiction. Police protection is effective protection, which is what my grandmother made very clear that we needed. With regard to the taxpayer part of it, I don't need to go into detail of how much, the royal family costs or how much protection costs or whatever. What I will say is that some of the British tabloid press did a very good job in campaigning to have our security removed by quoting figures such as £20 million. Right, and through this disclosure process, I've seen constituents in the UK write to their MP saying, I don't want to, as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for Meghan and Harry's security at this cost. They're literally quoting headlines from British newspapers. Those figures are obviously grossly exaggerated by about 18, 19 times. And further to that, if you know that other people are being protected, people that have made a choice for public office, then why wouldn't you be comfortable, happy with someone in my position who's given 35 years service to his country, 2 tours of Afghanistan, and the threats and risks to my life? I was born into this position. I was born into those risks, and they've only increased over time, along with my marriage to Meghan, and the frenzy across media, mainstream media and social media that created. So, and I guess on top of that as well, probably what people don't know, but that is mentioned in the judgment today, Ravek protect private citizens. I was made a private citizen by the royal household, not by Ravek, by the royal household. I can't be a private citizen. I will never be seen as a private citizen. I will never be treated as a private citizen, not by the media, not by most people, and certainly not by anybody that wants to harm me or my wife or our kids. So I think once people realise or understand that there are private citizens who have never played any role in public office and never will play any public role, that because they are high risk, they are protected at taxpayers' expense, and rightly so, because it will affect not only with that person, could they end up in hospital or worse on UK soil, but it comes down to impact, and it comes down to the reputational impact of the UK if that person or those people are injured on UK soil. But apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
And just to be absolutely clear, what is the difference between the top level security you say you should have and the security you are given on this case-by-case basis when you go
to
the
details of the security I can't talk about. All I will say is that the last RMB assessment that I was given, I scored the highest. The only person within the family that scored anywhere near that was my grandmother. Overnight, I was reduced to the lowest. This case-by-case basis has been used by Ravek and also by large sections of the British press to say, well, what's the big problem? You're given something on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, that case-by-case basis is separated by the reason for my visit. Sorry, just to give you more context on that. It's not really a case-by-case basis. It's an either-or. If you're invited to the UK by your family, then we will give you security. If you come for any other reason, then you will get a very...
Hello everyone, I'm excited to introduce Bluesound, the new standard solution, 30 kilowatts and 50 kilowatts, all-in-one cabinets. Let's have a look.
Low amount of security. I'm not going to confirm what that is, but it is completely insufficient. Somewhere along the line, people have talked about the fact that all it is someone on the end of a phone. So, no matter how much private security I have around me, there's only so much that I can do and operate and function within the UK when it comes to supporting my charities, visiting my friends, all of these things. So, I've been treated very, very, very differently to everybody else that exists. All examples that exist, past, present, I have been singled out.
You've spoken very openly about the fact that you think you've been punished for leaving the monarchy. Who specifically do you think is trying to punish you?
I don't think that anymore. Now I know that it was, security was used as leverage, and And I think what really worries me more than anything else about today's decision, depending on what happens next, is that it's set a new precedent that security can be used to control members of the family, and effectively what it does is imprison other members of the family from being able to choose a different life. If for me security is conditional on having an official role, one that both myself and my wife wished to carry on, but then was rejected, not by Ravek, was rejected by the royal household, and the result to that is you lose your security. That basically says that you can't live outside of their control if you want to be safe. But it was a pretty hard decision there, and I think if you strip away all the noise of everything that's been said by other people and all the noise that's been created around this, if you strip that all away, I think what people will hear is that the only thing that I've been asking for throughout this whole process is safety, both when I was when I was part of the institution and when we left. And the important piece here, Neda, is for me and my wife. Well, I mean, I'm not sure how much I can say, but I can never leave the royal family. That is my family. That is my larger family. I left the institution because at the end of the day I had to. I didn't leave it in 2020. I left it in 2021. But security was removed in 2020.
Speaking of your family, your father is ill with cancer. Will you continue to visit him alone without the family? Where does this leave things moving forward, the ability of your children to see their grandfather?
Life is a precious thing, and I'm acutely aware of the fragility of that. I can only come to the UK safely if I'm invited. And there is a lot of control and ability in my father's hands. Ultimately, this whole thing could be resolved through him, not necessarily by intervening, but by stepping aside, allowing the experts to do what is necessary and to carry out an RMB. That said, this all was initiated under a previous government. And there is now a new government. I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and that's what it feels like.
So should Keir Starmer step in?
I think that, based on the judgment that the court has put out today, it clearly states that Ravek aren't constrained by law. Again, I wish somebody had said that from the beginning. If they're not constrained by law, then this decision was made by the royal prerogative, which means that on national security matters, my case, which the other side have used national security exclusions and excuses to withhold certain information from me, restrict me from being able to speak about certain things to the public, that this national security matter is not bound by any law, and that Ravek can abandon the very processes, the very expert processes that exist to protect individuals and the people around them, as well as the decision makers themselves, from liability if anything should happen. So, I would ask the Prime Minister to step in. I would ask Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to look at this very, very carefully, and I would ask her to review Ravek and its members, because if it is an expert body, then what is the royal household's role there if it isn't to influence and decide what they want for the members of their household?
Do you want the court battle to continue? Do you want to try to see this get to the Supreme Court?
I don't want any battles to continue. There is way too much suffering and way too much conflict in the world. This, at the heart of it, is a family dispute. And it makes me really, really sad that we're sitting here today, 5 years later, where a decision that was made, most likely, in fact I know, to keep us under the roof. But then once they realised that that wasn't going to work, once they realised that, you know, myself, my wife, and our kids are happier outside of the institution, then please just look at the facts. Look at the risks, look at the threat, look at the impact that if anything was to happen to me, my wife, or my father's grandchildren, if anything was to happen to them, look where the responsibility lies. You know? So, you know, there's a duty of care that has been completely thrown out the window. And that doesn't feel great. You know, whether we agree or disagree, and there's a lot we agree on, there's a lot that we disagree on. But that aside, where is the duty of care? Because, as I said, life is precious, and it is very clear that from 2020, because I was no longer allowed an official role, and because I decided to remove myself eventually from the institution, that my life got devalued from the highest score to the lowest score overnight.
And how does that make you feel, given you have expressed numerous times that you do not want history to repeat itself?
Yeah, I don't want history to repeat itself. I think there's a lot of other people out there, the majority, that also don't want history to repeat itself. Through the disclosure process, I've discovered that some people want history to repeat itself, which is pretty dark.
That's quite a statement. Who do you think that is?
I'm not going to share it at this point. You know, I know all the names of the people that were involved in this process, and again, you know, you have to question, why wasn't I put through the same risk management board that everybody else was put through, including members of my family?
And you reject it not because you're no longer a working royal.
Sorry?
And you reject that it has nothing to do with the fact that you're no longer a working royal.
Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the security needs that I would need. Let me rephrase that. Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the threats, risks, and impact on the reputation of the UK if something was to happen. And again, that is proven by all of the examples that exist out there. So for me, having an official role was conditional on keeping security. But for everybody else, people who have chosen this life to enter into public office and then leave, get it for life, regardless of whether they have risk or threat to their name. And by the way, I agree with that. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. That if you come in and you serve your country, even if it's a minimum of 4 years, that you get the protection that you require because of your public service. I was born into this position. It wasn't a choice. I've served my country for 35 years. I believe that I am still continuing to serve my country. Public service is my life. That is the dedication that will never change. And then all the other bits and pieces that are added to that. You know, there are very, very real threats that exist out there. Some that are known about, some that have been withheld. And for people in power and responsibility of decisions to know that those threats and risks exist, but to turn around and say, well, because you don't have an official role, your life doesn't actually matter anymore. Well, you can imagine how I feel about that, but you can also imagine, not even imagine, that is the most illogical argument in the history of arguments.
And finally, just because you mentioned, you know, your connection to your country, your public service, after this years-long battle, do you think your relationship has changed with the UK? Do you feel let down by your country?
That's a big question. At this point, I'm feeling very let down. it's the minority of people, especially those that read the tabloids and the press themselves. The press themselves have incited so much hatred towards myself, my wife, and even our children, that's hard to forgive. There are decisions that have been made, there are things that have happened since 2016 especially, throughout my whole life, but let's just stick since 2016, there are things that have happened that I can now forgive. I have moved past that. I can forgive my family's involvement, my father, my brother, and my stepmother. I can forgive the press to a large extent as well for so many things that have happened. What I'm struggling to forgive, and what I will probably always struggle to forgive, is that a decision that was made in 2020 that affects my every single day, and that is knowingly putting me and my family in harm's way. Everybody knew that they were putting us at risk in 2020, and they hoped that me knowing that risk would force us to come back. But then when you realise that that didn't work, do you not want to just keep us safe? Whether you're the government, whether you're the royal household, whether you're my dad, my family, despite all of our differences, do you not want to just ensure our safety? And I'm calling for, the Home Secretary and the government to do a review of RAVEC. And I'm also asking for an R&B assessment that I haven't received since 2019.
Just because you spoke there about forgiveness, it sounds like the last step to repairing relations with your family is the security issue, by what you said there.
100%.
Uulan na! Uulan na ng kotse sa Playtime!
The more followers, mas maraming kotseng ipamimigay. Share nyo na sa pamilya at tropa. Follow ang FB page ni Playtime at maglaro na. 100 cars, 1 epic giveaway.
Want to travel for less? Agoda makes it easy. Book early, save big. Agoda's got early bird deals waiting for you.
Whatever noise has been created, whatever stories have been written, this has always been the sticking point. And put yourself in my shoes. If you step back to try to create a different role, the same official role, but a different working relationship with the institution that you were born into for the sake of your wife and your own mental health and your child, which now, of course, a lot more has come out because I felt as though it needed to come out. The other side of the story needed to be told. God forbid anything should happen. And I don't regret that at all. But 2020, when that decision happened, I couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe it. I thought with all the disagreements and all of the chaos that's happening, the one thing that I could rely on is my family keeping me safe. And not only did they decide to remove my security in the UK, but they also signalled to every single government around the world not to protect us.
How are you feeling about this decision? Because clearly you have 2 children, Archie, Lilibet. They're not able to see their grandfather, their uncle, their cousins in a way that you feel is safe for them. So what's your feelings kind of moving forward? Is there any way that this could be resolved?
Firstly, I'm devastated. Not so much as devastated as with the loss that I am about the people behind the decision, feeling as though this is okay. Is it a win for them? Is it a win that that I don't get the protection that the threats and risks and impact say that I should? I would hope they wouldn't consider it a win. And I'm sure there's some people out there, probably the most likely the people that wish me harm, consider this a huge win. But there have been so many disagreements, differences between me and some of my family. this current situation that has been ongoing for 5 years with regard to human life and safety is the sticking point. It is the only thing that's left. Of course, some members of my family will never forgive me for writing a book. Of course, they will never forgive me for lots of things. But, you know, there is. I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. You know, he won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations and I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth. Well, I've now found out the truth. I've shared some of it with you today. A lot of it exists out there, whether people choose to ignore it or not. You know, so it would be nice to have that reconciliation part now. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.
And now that this court battle is over, do you feel you will be able to approach your father and speak about some of those issues?
I mean, no, I don't think he would ever want to talk about it. I think he would just push it aside, and the argument will continue to be this is a government decision. It may well be a government decision, but how did they reach that decision? You know, when the Rabbit Chair, the first place that they went to was the palace to understand what it is that the royal household or what the royal family want for me. I've never ever been allowed or offered to make my own representations. Not in 2020 and not for the last 5 years. And the new Ravet Chair continues to avoid answering some very specific questions that I have. And one of your previous questions that I think is really important is this case-by-case basis. For me, and only me, there has to be a royal obligation in order to receive protection on UK soil. And I think that speaks volumes.
Thank you.
Sigurado ako yari ka sa asawa mo kapag natuklasan niya to. Alam niyo ba na itong maliit na bagay na ito, malaking tulong para malukit lahat ng mga bagay-bagay. Ultimo tao,
whole country would gather around the wireless.
Absolutely. And it was a family moment.
Yeah.
We can just see, sorry to interrupt, Michael, we can